listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, I had the opportunity to interview Kristof Morrow. Kristof, who is originally from Texas but now lives in the Canadian province of British Columbia, is the author of The Second Son. I'm here with Kristof Morrow, who is the author of The Second Son. Kristof, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Hello, Aaron. Thank you for having me on your show.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, I'm sorry. I have Tourette's. That's something that you'll discover throughout this discussion. But I'm a writer originally from Texas. And I joined the military right out of high school, and then started writing. Then I lived all over the country and started taking writing very seriously. I got a job as a reporter in Texas, and then after everything went kind of haywire in America, I moved to Canada. So I live here. I live here now, and that's what I do full time is write. So.
Without spoiling too much of your book, The Second Son, what is that book about?
It's essentially an allegory for older generations that we share this world with, living in a kind of paradise, financial or otherwise, while the rest of us sort of live in a Game of Thrones type, eat or be eaten kind of world. And I mean, everything that I'm talking about is informed by stats, like how much wealth our generation has versus older generations at the same age as we were when they were our age. And it's about climate change, and it's about empire. I try to be comprehensive, I think, in what I discuss in terms of there's so many things I try to cover. But I really I'll tell you what I avoid. I think that's actually maybe a shorter list. I don't really care for sexism or racism in this particular because it's not a very helpful conversation or productive. It can't. And I like Tolkien's strategy where he made anyone feel like they could achieve greatness, and they could undermine authoritarianism and do beautiful and wonderful things with great effort and sacrifice.
How did you use TikTok to promote your book?
Well, initially it began as I started a TikTok to discuss Tourette's because I had seen many people on the platform, but it was kind of famous for that for a while. I thought I saw. So I joined to participate in that conversation. And for the first 3 weeks, I didn't talk about my work at all. I just talked about, so I only had my account for 3 weeks before I went viral. And I sold it and I had a video that went I had almost 400,000 views, and another one that has almost 300,000 that I made right after that. And it was because it's funny. I'm a woman that I don't know. I didn't know before. She's become a very dear friend of mine, though. Very, very dear to me. Sandra, she's the first person who ever read my book that I didn't know. And she told me that she loved my work, and she was the first person to review it. Because of her review, though, 2 people bought my book, and now I made a video about that. And so after she reviewed, I made the video about her, and then I made another video about the 2 people that bought it because of her. And then the next morning when I woke up, I saw that that I had jumped from 40. I was number 40,000 something in different categories, and I was in the hundreds, and I was number 247, I think, in epic fantasy on Amazon. So I made a video about that, and that's the one that went viral. And I've sold about 1,200 copies. And about a third of those are physical. So yeah, that's really it. I just discussed my work in that sense. Yeah.
Now, is your book self-published, traditionally published, or published via a hybrid press?
It's definitely self-published. I had a rationale for that. And it's that, and it's actually informed by Justin Bieber's success. Because even he, like, this is like a long, like over a decade ago, he was nobody, and nobody knew who he was. And then he had YouTube, and then he was discovered that way. And I mean, thousands of people, very, very talented people on YouTube and other platforms, have been discovered this way. And if the quality of your work is not wanting, then it will succeed. It's going to work for you because that's just the quality. That's just the way the world works. Um, at a certain point, right? So yeah, I was encouraged also by, I saw um, HarperCollins a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was a couple of years, but they purchased Simon and Schuster, which there's like five big publishing companies or something, and Simon and Schuster was one of them. And so it's like it would be like it'd be like Walmart buying Kroger. It just you would know that the whole industry is in trouble if one of the big five is failing to is failing to make it on their own. And so I thought, like, what value does a publisher really provide if they're struggling right now? And so, and then I discovered that Charles Dickens was rejected over 60 something times by publishers. I had already suffered a few rejections for my book before I had made some pretty thorough revisions. Um, so I didn't really feel like pursuing that again, and I just wanted to get my work out there. I didn't really care about trying to appease like people that I don't know the quality of their taste, or you know.
Do you plan on writing more books?
Oh, absolutely. I'm writing the third volume right now of the Second Son series. So, um, yeah, the first I actually wrote a kid's book too, but that was for a gift, and I ended up publishing it but taking it down for just because it felt more personal. And But the first two books, the first two volumes of the Second Son, were actually meant to be one book, but I thought I would be able to give away one of the volumes for free, and then have the second volume. You can purchase that one if you thought I was worth that expense. And so, but that ended up not being that way. They don't let you do that on Amazon. So I just combined them into one and two, and now I'm working on the third volume. So.
Earlier in your adult life, you would exchange letters with Robert Olin Butler of A
Mm-hmm.
Good Scent from a Strange Mountain fame.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Robert Olin Butler is from my home state of Illinois.
Mm.
What was it like to exchange letters with a Pulitzer Prize winner?
It's funny because he didn't answer me for a long time. He didn't answer me for a while. I just kept writing him though. So I knew that he taught at Florida State University. He was the head of the creative writing department there, and I was getting into. I was starting to take writing very seriously, and like very thoughtfully considering like what it meant to me, and what does prose mean, and what is the function and purpose of a story, and why do we share them. And and in those, I started to write and reflect on that and talk to him and wrote to him about it. And he finally wrote me back, and like at 2 o'clock in the morning, one day. And I freaked out, and I called my friend, who was the first person to ever set up a public reading for me in Louisiana when I was in my early 20s. Um, she she's a very lovely woman, and we and but anyway, so basically it was really extraordinary to be able to talk to him, because of course he has a great deal of wisdom in terms of like actually producing the content, even if you don't exactly meet in terms of style, like you don't agree and how like it should manifest, but in terms of actually creating it and having the discipline and different strategies for like producing for generating your work, he was really good at that. um, and helping you to like thoughtfully consider a scene and to better describe it. I mean, and more relevance. I don't know. Um, and it was a, but it became kind of it became really nice later on, because it became more casual, and I could sort of just share with him a little bit. I didn't share with him any of my work for the first few years, actually, that I wrote to him, though. So he didn't read anything I wrote until about 2.5 years in, maybe.
Now, you mentioned in your introduction that you have Tourette's syndrome, and I'm going to ask this because there was a popular YouTuber, the Tourette's guy was what he went under YouTube. I don't know what his real name was, but as I have an autism spectrum disorder, and it affects me differently than a lot of other people that have autism or autism spectrum disorders. How does your Tourette's syndrome affect you in your life?
Oh boy. It has completely transformed my relationship with people and with myself. And it's because it's so evident that I have it when I'm out in public. And so it didn't actually manifest until I was in the Navy, in the U.S. Navy. And I had, and I didn't experience, it was very episodic after that and sparse. So like I would experience one episode every few years, maybe. And that went on until I was about 25. And then then it started to become more apparent and the symptoms more frequent. And I started having actual tics um, every day. And then I was diagnosed at 27. And the thing is that I have injured myself like like I my tics actually compel me to punch things. And so my right hand is like chronically swollen. I can't actually use it right now. Really, I can't grab things with it because it hurts too much. So I have to use my left hand for everything now, which is real pain, literally and figuratively. And my tics, they force me, like I punch myself in the face. Uh, I've given myself black eyes. I've given myself all kinds of like knots on my head, and I had a tick for a while that put me in the hospital a couple times. I was clenching my teeth and I was gonna break my own teeth. So they had to give me like a thing so I wouldn't, like a mouth guard and a bunch of other medications so I wouldn't do that. Um, and I'm not sure how much it affects my dating, but it did sort of end my marriage because it's destructive to your ability to cope. Um, yeah, with a lot of stuff, because I mean, imagine contending with all of that on top of like having regular human anxiety and all the other things that are symptomatic of despair.
You've been sober for some time now after battling alcoholism. How long have
Mhm.
you been sober, and what is the best advice that you could give someone who wants to quit his or her alcohol addiction?
Um, I've been sober since I was 27. It's funny because I became sober January 6th, 2017, I think. Um, and that was 2 weeks before Trump was inaugurated. Um, so my suggestion, I think, is to let people is you have to be, first of all, forgiving and understand that you are going to make a lot of rationalizations for beginning different kinds of substances that share in the fact that it will make you drunk. Like you'll do wine, and then you'll try, oh, I'm going to do beer. Then I'm only going to drink light beer. Um, People do that with every kind of addiction. They do that with they try to find ways to escape the consequences of like not being able to control the urge to want something. And so you have to respect that is a real, true human flaw that is just part of our nature. Forgive yourself for that, and or realize that it is just true that if you struggle with alcoholism and you drink too much, it will kill you. and it'll either kill you or ruin your relationships with every person that you love, and you just cannot do that. It just and in the same sense that you have to fight against bitterness and prejudice that you start to experience from negative experiences with different groups of people, because you know that bitterness in the end, there's millions of movies and TV shows about this. We have to You cannot become bitter, because in the end it will eat you, it will devour you.
Now, is it true that you raised a child, but you found out that you weren't a father after having raised the child for 2 years or so?
Yeah.
How did you end up raising a child that you weren't the father of?
Just like anybody else, delusion, I think, and affection for another person, and when that affection is reciprocated in good faith, right? Uh, and there's actually a number of reasons why. Uh, First of all, it was kind of close in the first place, like in terms of like how that would come out. The baby was they had blonde hair, and they had blonde hair and blue eyes like me, and they have another genetic defect that is really rather specific and to me that I've never known anyone else to have, and it's in a place that I like that it's just not common. And so there was a number. It was those qualities that made me go, what? Oh my God! Actually, this is my kid. Um, and then after 2 years, when my relationship ended with her mom, uh, we decided to get a DNA test just to be sure, and that's when we found out. And it was fine, honestly, because um, I still wanted to be a dad, but I realized and I had to respect her mom's want to like move on, and the baby was only 2 years old, so um, didn't she didn't even remember. Like, I met her when I was doing a film later on, a few years later, like 5 or 6 years later. I saw she actually came with the baby that I raised. The baby did not recognize me at all. She had no memory of me whatsoever. Um, so it's quite strange, but yeah. So
Kristof, you were a wonderful guest for this podcast, and I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author podcast.
well, thank you for having me.
Kristof was an amazing guest to interview. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Facebook at AuthorAAC and on Instagram at AACScribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.